Hey, the subject of this video is going to be the principle of respect for the elderly. Just blowing off something on my keyboard there. Um, the pretext of this, in which I'm speaking in the context, probably I should say, is a report from Shanghaiist, and it's about a schoolboy. I guess he's in his teens, who accidentally ran into an elderly man in Shandong province on his bicycle. Well, I've looked at the video and it's quite clearly an accident. The young boy wasn't being malicious. It was just an accident. These things happen. Anyway, the boy apologized immediately, but it's quite clear the old man wasn't content with that. After verbally berating him, he repeatedly hit the young boy, repeatedly. And I'm not talking a tap, I'm talking like really laid into him. Um, There was one woman who intervened. My Chinese is patchy, but I think she was sort of trying to get the old man to calm down. But basically, to cut, to summarize this, it was a massive overreaction on the part of the man. Um, the young boy apologized. There was no malicious intent, and yeah. Anyway, this got me thinking about the concept of respect for the elderly. Um, this is something that actually isn't just an Eastern phenomenon. It's sorry for that. There's pieces of dust on my keyboard right now. Anyway, it's not solely an Eastern phenomenon. Actually, contrary to popular belief, in the West there is a concept of respect for the elderly as well. It may be a bit more enforced in the East. Countries like China, Japan, I believe especially South Korea, takes this very seriously. I've seen videos from Korea where, like on the Seoul Metro, for instance, where there's some very rude older people being rude to younger people, and the younger people pretty much can't do anything about it. So definitely it's taken to a very formal level in Eastern society, but in the West there is a principle of respect for the elderly as well. It's just that it isn't really as much enforced. Here's the thing: if you're a decent person, you'll recognize that somebody who is older is likely to be more fragile, is likely to be a bit more frail. So things like, for example, giving up your seat on the bus for an older person, all of that is completely understandable. I think that's normal. It's part of being a civilized society, and it's part of being a decent human being. If you see an older woman crossing the road and it's really busy, and this is something that is in the West because I know in China there's risks involved with this, which I'll come to in a minute. But for example, in the West, if you see an old person struggling with groceries, helping them out, all this sort of stuff, um, this is sort of instilled in culture to the point of almost being a cliche. It's been used in many comic strips, in fact. Um, so to be clear, I've got no problem with the principle in itself. And certainly when I'm in my 70s or 80s, I'd like to think that I'm not abused or not sort of abandoned. Hopefully, I'll be pretty strong for my age, and I intend to be quite, to look after myself. But if I am in a situation where I'm frail and I'm in bad health, I'd like to think that that generation will be, they'll be hospitable to older people. Some countries have a better reputation for it than others. Anyway, in recent years in China, there has been a phenomenon of especially older people conning both Westerners and other Chinese, younger Chinese, with all sorts of things. There was an incident, again, I believe it was Shandong province. Maybe it was one of the northern provinces, but an old man collapsed on the side of the road. Two young police officers went to help him out, assuming he'd had a heart attack or something. Um, but then he accused them of knocking him down. So these people will even go to the extent of trying to extort money from the police. That's how brash they are. It turns out there's nothing wrong with him. He's just trying to extort money. And there has been examples of older people, for example, pretending to collapse and then the relatives, it's all part of a scam for the relatives to get money. This is something that has had a backlash because now people are reluctant to be good Samaritans in China. It's not that, contrary to popular belief or contrary to some xenophobic views, it's not that the Chinese are uncaring and heartless. It's that there is a problem with fraud, and people understandably want to be careful. They don't want to be falsely accused of something. The nearest Western equivalent is with the whole paedophilia thing, i.e., in the West, and this is perhaps similar, but with the opposite with children. In the West, adults, especially men, are reluctant to, for example, help out a lost child in case they're accused of being a paedophile, kidnapping the child. Well, in China, younger people are becoming wary of helping older people in case this sort of situation arises. Now, it's really sad that has come about, that there is such dishonesty for two reasons. Firstly, it kills off good nature, um, and secondly, it means that those older people who are in genuine trouble won't get the help because people will be reluctant to help them. Um, so that's something that has been quite apparent in recent years. I don't know so much about the situation in Japan and South Korea and other Asian countries if they've had similar problems with these sort of extortion fraud situations. Um, but regarding respect for the elderly, I've got a philosophy on this. So, like I've already said, if someone's frail and so on, it's completely the decent thing to do to, for example, give up your seat or offer them with shopping or whatever. Um, but here's the thing, and if there was an emergency situation, we're talking about women and children first. Maybe that should be extended to women, children, and elderly people. If you have refugees, for example, I think most people would see an elderly man or woman as being vulnerable. Um, anyway, the thing about respect for the elderly, this is my philosophy, and it's something people don't seem to touch on a lot. If you're an older person, surely you have fewer excuses to be ignorant, to be racist, to be a bully, or to treat other people like shit. So the idea that because they're old, it should be a sort of uncompromising respect, I really take issue with. If I was in a situation where, I hope this never arises, but let's say I'm with a girl and an older person decides to treat her the way that man was treating the young lad, I would definitely not hold back. I wouldn't physically touch them, but I would say, get the hell away from her. Would I get any favors from it? Probably not. But I think there needs to be a change in attitudes to this because, I mean, to be fair, in that incident, there was a woman who did try to intervene and get the old man to lay off, but he should be charged with assault as far as I'm concerned because the young boy, it was clearly an accident. The young boy apologized, he couldn't do anything else. And from what I could see, the old man wasn't seriously hurt at all. So it's not like, oh, he was badly hurt and he's just responding with anger. You know, it was it was a complete overreaction. Um, so I think that when we're talking about respect for the elderly, it works both ways. Older people also have to respect young people who have the rest of their life ahead of them. Older people have lived their lives. And here's the thing, if they're being a very unpleasant individual as an older person, the chances are that's what they were like as a younger person anyway. Um, Also, we have to remember not all older people are the same. You get lovely old people. I'm not sort of attacking all older people here. You get some really lovely older people who are open-minded, decent human beings, which is probably what they were when they were young. So this is not a tirade against older people. I'm not trying to create a generation war here. Um, but I just think this sort of slavish notion of they're old so they're right, or they're old so they can get away with acting like that, I think it's something that needs to be challenged, both east and west. Let me know your thoughts.